Gav, the casual sniper. Thanks for joining us to do this, mate.
No worries.
Yeah, loads to talk about. So I thought we'll just jump straight in and sort of go back, I guess, to where it started for you, sort of in terms of the casual culture. And I assume that was through football and Pompey, was it?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it was mid-80s, started going to Pompey with the lads from school, you know. And then I don't think at the time you realise what you're sort of not getting into, but what's sort of evolving. The lads that you hang around with, you know, every Saturday morning it was down to like Portsmouth to buy something new. By the time we'd left school and started working, obviously, you were down there Saturday morning, buy, you know, a new shirt or something like that, and that all came part and parcel of the football. You know, you all went off, and of course at that time Stone Island was in, but not like it is now. You know, it's general now, isn't it? It's just, but back then it was quite exclusive to the football. So yeah, that's where it started, and it just kept going, you know.
And so when did you first kind of become aware we're going to football that clothes were becoming a sort of a big deal? Was it just that you'd go and buy something?
It was just part and parcel of it, same as the drinking. It all came as one little package, and I think it depended on what sort of lads you went with. You either went with, like, excuse the term, but scarfers.
Yeah.
You know, you either went with them or you went with the lads, the casual lads. You know, but at the time it was just what everyone wore, and you know you were carried along on that sort of flow. But it wasn't until, you know, now when you look back and see what was actually evolving. You know. Yeah.
And did you have much awareness of it outside of Pompey in terms of, you know, away fans coming down? Were you influenced by seeing anyone else, or did everyone?
There was one funny story. And this was years later. I went up to London, and I saw this guy, and he had the wedge haircut, but he was in his like 50s.
Yeah.
And you know, like in Quadrophenia, you've got the ace face, you know, Sting. And I looked at this bloke, and not in a sort of gay way. I thought, wow, he looks the dogs. And as I looked him up and down, he had a pair of white kickers on.
Right.
I thought, he looks the business. Well, then that was my mission, to get a pair of white kickers. I'd never seen, probably because going back again to the 80s, of course, later on in the 80s, the rave culture started. And that's where the kickers really came into their own, and pasties and stuff. But this guy in his white kickers, that was my mission then, to find a pair. And I did. I got a pair in the end, and I still love them. I still wear them out. And people make comments. Yeah, it's all sort of things like that. Yeah, the older lads would have, you know, lads that were maybe 10, 15 years older than me would turn up at the pub with Armani blazers on of an evening and stuff like that, you know. It was cool.
And you mentioned obviously going into town, going into Pompey to buy stuff, and because obviously there's sort of well known, you know, everywhere's almost got its iconic shop, isn't it, and where stuff.
Yeah, Hellraisers and Mr. Blue it was at the time.
Was that it in Portsmouth? So what were they called? Sorry.
Hellraisers.
Hellraisers. Yeah.
And Mr. Blue. Yeah. Okay. And you used to go, and I remember one time I went in, they had complete Paisley t-shirts, and I thought I'll have one of them, and I bought it. And of course that night we all went down, our local pub at the time was called In on the Beach. It's literally on the beach, this pub. And I walked in, and I got absolute ripped to shreds because of this t-shirt, right? Anyway, about 2 weeks later, a few of these other lads, my mates, come in. I said, hang on a minute, they had these Paisley t-shirts, because obviously the shops, I don't know where they were getting the influence themselves, but they were stocking this stuff, which was obviously, you know, a hit somewhere else sort of thing, you know, whether in London. And it you know, you went along, when you went in there, they had something new. And me being me, because I love stuff different, I always like to be a bit different. And yeah, that you know, I love that sort of thing. You know, I'm not too frightened to go out, you know, and wear something that no one else is wearing. You know, I went out the other day in a completely white Barber jacket, and you know, most people, it was all the old E17 jokes. But when I was out in it, and I saw this bird I know, and she said, "God, Gav," she said, "you don't half look smart," and I was like, "Wow," you know, after all the ripping out of me. You know,
well, it pushes boundaries a bit, isn't it? And so I suppose we'll come on to that a bit later, actually, in terms of sort of casual culture now. But could you get more or less what you wanted in Pompey, or did you, when you went up to London, did you get stuff, or?
It wasn't so much going up to London to buy stuff then. It was more just exclusive to Pompey, you know.
Yeah.
London was just the away days,
Yeah.
you know, the football. Yeah, you were more going up there. You were more engrossed in getting in the pubs and getting to the game. So, but yeah, it was years later that I started to, you know, go up to London when I became sober and things like that, because I didn't have that threat of the pubs, you know.
Yeah. And so you know, you sort of mentioned Stone Island then. So when it first sort of started, well, through the 80s, early 90s, what were the biggest brands? What were your favourite brands? What was really sort of, what really defined it then?
That was all the in things. Stone Island. I'm trying to think back. There was Reebok trainers, obviously Adidas, stuff like that. But it was bizarre. You go in the 80s, you went from all that casual look to suddenly rave culture hit.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was 88, 89 where that really became prevalent. And you were then going on to chippy stuff and naff, and you went from guys looking really sort of smart to basically dressed in like a hippie. And it changed the whole of the football scene. You know, I remember going, we of course, then it was all illegal raves.
Yeah.
So we were going to raves maybe on a Friday night and coming back home at 5, 6 in the morning, then going off to football. And you turned up in your rave gear, basically. But at Pompey, and it's a bit of a myth with the crowds, back then, the attendances weren't so huge. So we'd all go, turn up, you know, hardly had any sleep. We'd end up kipping on the terraces. And I can remember laying down and one of our mates kicking me and saying, "What's the score?" I said, "I don't know. I've been asleep." Because that's the way it was. But it all came, you know, and that whole scene took over the clothing, you know.
Yeah.
That was massive at the time.
So you did sort of move with it, because I know obviously you mentioned that you've got a scooter. Did you have a scooter when you were younger, or was that something you've come to? No.
One of my mates did, and it was always, there's a girl I know, and when I became sober, and obviously I got the scooter, and she said to me, whenever we used to meet up, she said, "You'd always be going on about this dream of getting a scooter."
Yeah.
You know, and that wasn't until I got, because there was no way I'd be able to ride around on a scooter out of my brains, you know. But that was one of my dreams, and I fulfilled it, you know. So it's all those little things that added to, you know, my recovery, you know.
Yeah. And so in terms of sort of mod, because the mod casual thing obviously was kind of interlinked. Did you see yourself as a mod, or was it just just mixed in?
I was always into the casual stuff. It was funny. My son was out doing a gardening job the other day for a mate of mine I haven't seen in years, and he said to my boy, "Does your dad still wear lowest cords and Adidas trainers? That's what he used to wear years ago." And my boy said, "Yeah, he still does." So it was always, you know,
So all right, well let's talk a bit about the drink and stuff then. So when, I suppose, it was naturally part of football, I guess, when you were younger, was it? Yeah. You know, and that it just
took it to another level.
Yeah.
I took it, you know, I remember going to football, and obviously early years you didn't because you were too young. But as the time, 17, 18, you'd start going and you'd have a few beers before the game and things. And then at the time I didn't drink at home. Yeah. And I always we had a flat right on the beach. And I always remember coming home after football. My missus at the time, she said, "Why don't you go and get yourself a few beers?" And I did. And then gradually that became a habit.
Yeah.
You know, and then I was working in a factory, and a few guys there were like, I always called them special brew boys. So we would, lunch times, we'd sneak off down the road, go to the local office, and we'd hide in this little sort of memorial garden, and have the special brew, you know. And it gradually crept up on me.
Yeah.
And football. I mean, I'd go to football, and most people would tell you, I'd get on the train at say 5, 6 in the morning if we were going up north, and I'd have a crate of 20 Strongbow, and the majority of that Strongbow would be gone by the time I got to London. And that was in the later years, obviously, you know. So I was, by the time I got to games, I was totally incoherent. I was, how I ever got in, I don't know. But I mean, people used to sort of, a bit like that Sylvester Stallone in Escape to Victory, where they made up that dummy of him. I think they used to sort of get me in like that. I mean, you shouldn't laugh really, but if you don't look back at the way I was, people say you shouldn't look back, but I do to an extent, because I can see how far forward I've come and how
absolutely
changed.
Did you say it sort of crept up on you, and was you obviously got pleasure from it, but did you feel like it was just a habit that really escalated, or was there, did you feel better when you drank, or did you feel worse, or was it to sort of?
Well, I was alcohol dependent.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I was a functioning alcoholic. I used to go to work, and majority of people would never know. And I used to have to go, I worked in the park, and I used to have to go back of an afternoon. I'd already had 5 or 6 beers.
Yeah.
But my tolerance levels were so massive, no one would have known. I might have smelt a bit of drink, obviously, but my tolerance levels were that big, I could act quite normal.
Yeah.
I used to have a mate, before I was still drinking, yeah, but not to that extent. And we used to drink in a pub. He was a lot older than me. And we'd drink all day, and he never seemed to get drunk. And I used to say, Dave, I said, you're never drunk. And I always remember his words. He said, if you drink 25 pints plus a day, he said, you ain't going to seem drunk.
Yeah.
Because of his levels. And that's where I was heading. But I think inside, I sort of knew I was different to everyone.
Yeah.
You know, I'd come home on a Saturday night, not remember anything, you know, of that day. And then I'd go around to my parents on a Sunday, and Dad would ask me about the game. And I'd just waffle some load of cobblers because I didn't have a clue, and that wasn't normal. Yeah, people would go and have a good drink at football, but not to that extent where you don't remember anything, you know.
And what sort of the habitual nature of it? I mean, was it beer and cider, and was it? It
started off
pubs, or was it just sort of mix of everything?
It started off with beer and like rum chasers and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think in my own mind, I knew that the spirits weren't doing me any good. So I knocked those on the head, which gave me a bit of hope that I knew I could give up, you know, when the time came that I needed to give up. But yeah, then it then became what was cheapest.
Yeah.
And what was, you know, ready, available. And of course, Tesco's over the road, Strongbow, was cheap, and I could get proper gone on that, you know. And it near the end, it was to the point, you know, like in Train Spotting, where you see the junkies jacking up and they get that massive hit. Well, if I didn't get to that massive hit, I would keep drinking till I reached it.
Yeah.
And it was that whole passing out thing.
Yeah.
It's not a great place to be at all, but once it's got there, that's where you're heading. You're heading for that massive hit.
And did you sort of just go from, you know, it started and it went up and up and up, and then it ended it, and you, or did you try and stop and sort of?
Yeah, there was numerous occasions I tried to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when my kids came along, it eased off a bit. I've always said this: you have to be a bit responsible, don't you? Of course, but as they got older, and I suppose not got my freedom back, but there was that little bit more. You know, they sort of would mum all the time, and I'd go off to football, and then it escalated again, and I'd start drinking indoors again, and you know, I'd go off over the pub on a Saturday and spend the majority of the day in the pub, or I'd take my kids, they'd come over and give them a colouring book and things like that. But yeah, but it just gradually, the more I drank, the more I needed.
Yeah. Did people, you know, talking about going to football, and obviously you mentioned your family there and stuff, did other people see it, and did anyone try into it? Yeah.
I can remember being in the pubs and people saying to me, Gav, you've got to stop.
Yeah.
But like I've always said, I was in that tunnel and no one could. I thought I was indestructible. I'm pretty sure I did, you know. Drink. I've always said this as well. Drink was my friend, and no one was telling me any different.
Yeah.
You know, it gave me confidence, all those things, you know. But it also gave me some of the darkest moments of my life.
Yeah.
You know, waking up, I'd disappear off from the house I'm in now, and I'd go in the pub, but then I'd come out and I'd go and buy some cans, and I'd disappear either down the beach or at the park, and I'd wake up somewhere, not knowing where I'd been, you know. And I don't know what time of day it was, and of course I'd come home and collapse there, you know. It probably took hold of me.
And because again, we'll talk about this a bit later on, but I find it interesting, particularly amongst the sort of casual scene and the guys you see on Twitter, and there's a lot more. It's quite a good community of support out there, and understanding with sort of your mates and more of the football crowd and that kind of thing. When you did try and when you started to stop, did people, were you worried about people judging you for it, or were you worried about losing friends, or sort of sticking within that world and not being able to have a drink? And were people sympathetic, you know, or were there people?
Yeah, they were, yeah, because a lot of them. I mean, I collapsed at a game. That's
Right.
why I had my fit and nearly died. You know, that was through going cold turkey, but that was my only way out. But yeah, the support I had, and that I always say thank you to them, and people are like, you don't have to thank us. We didn't really do anything, but they did. That was that support and the messages I got. And then, of course, I started writing my blogs about it. And yeah, the feedback I got was really, really lovely, you know. But then I look at some of my other mates. I used to, because the people who always accepted me were the other alcoholics. They understood me.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't judge me. They never. So, of course, my mates I used to drink with in the park. I would always, people would, you'd look at them and they wouldn't want to entertain them, you know, they wouldn't want to mix them. But some of them were old mates I'd grown up with.
Yeah.
So I used to go and drink with them. But when I had my fit that same week, my mate who I used to drink with the park in, he died because he didn't have that support. Yeah. I didn't realise that till obviously I you know, so many weeks later when I'd sort of come out of the darkness, yeah, he died and he didn't have that support I had. That all he had was the few lads that he drank with in the park. And it was just prior to when I gave up. I sat with Jason and he said to me, do you think you'll ever give up, Gav? And I said, I don't think I ever will. And he said, no, nor will I. And yeah, it was that, you know, look how it turned out. He's gone, you know, and he was one of the soundest guys. You know, years ago, he had this sort of curly sort of ginger hair, but in the rave that he really had the proper, you know, the long hair and all the gear. And I remember seeing him in the Isle of Wight and he'd come up the road and he did look the dogs. And then to see how quickly he always tried to keep himself up together, but he deteriorated, of course, you know, but he didn't have that support that I had, that network of people, you know, not whether or not they were aware of what they were doing, maybe they weren't, but they was all there for me, and it helped, and it gives you a bit of moral support, you know, and courage to carry on.
Yeah. So how did you first start? How did you go about it? What was the sort of journey to getting sober then?
Well, I got the sack from my job. I went into work one day. They asked me to take a picture of all these counsellors. I couldn't hold the phone to do it, and the bloke's always a bit nervous, but it wasn't. It was the DTs, and of course, eventually, they, you know, I had to leave the job. But it got to the point. Of course, leaving that job to me was free reign to drink more, and then I was really hitting it then. And it got to the point where I got up one morning, I couldn't hardly walk. The shakes were that bad. I went to brush my teeth, and no word of a lie, I held the sink and I thought it was going to come off the wall. It was like an earthquake.
Jesus.
And I went downstairs, managed to get down, and all I wanted was a glass of water. I didn't know what to do. It was either that or get another drink. And in my mind, I knew I've got to stop.
Yeah.
Because it was serious now, you know. I'd had the odd, you know, I had the DTs and things like that, of course, but not to the extent where I couldn't control my body. It was tremors. So I managed to get upstairs. I collapsed on the stairs. I think my daughter was in the bath and the missus was at work and my boy was at school. So I crawled back to bed and I went cold turkey. And you see these films about drug addicts where they're sweating, and it was like that. And I was literally climbing the walls because I wanted to go over the shop and get beers, you know, or cider to get me back to normal again. You know, that's what I always did. I'd get up, not on work days, but weekends, I'd get up 4 or 5 in the morning and start drinking, because then that would steady me and I'd be fine, you know. But yeah, that's what I did. I went cold turkey. I stayed there all the weekend. I think it was maybe the Monday my mum came round and she walked in the bed. I was all unshaven. I'm never unshaved. And I was so close to my nan, and of course nan went years ago, but she turned around and said to me, what would your nan think of you? You look like a tramp. And something in my mind, right, I've got to get up and start fighting back. And of course, on the Tuesday, my daughter said, Pompey were playing Coventry in a friendly at Haven. And my daughter said, should we go, Dad? I said, okay. And I went and I was drinking lemonade and lime. And again, people were coming up to me saying, oh, well done, Gav, because my daughter had said, Dad's stopped drinking. They were like, what? And they were all coming up and saying, well done, Gav. Well, and I went to the game and I came out, and the next minute I woke up, there's all these faces staring at me. I'd had this massive fit because of going cold turkey.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And did you go in hospital or anything? Or
no, the ambulance came. They put me in the ambulance. Eventually, because where I'd fitted so much, I couldn't see properly. It was all of my vision was pixelated. I was completely away with fairies. But they said, right, we're going to let you go, but you've got to go straight away and see your GP.
Yeah.
So I think it was the next day. My mum came round, and she'd been a nurse, so she knew the GPs, and she rang one of them and said, explain what. And he said, don't worry, get Gav up here. And they took me up and they gave me loads of blood tests. And he said to me, your liver, he said, I haven't seen a liver cane like it. And it was a massive wake up call. Yeah. And I had to go for tests on my heart. It had done so many things to me. And that's what people don't realise. Now, I've still got pins and needles in my hands because he said all the nerve endings go, and at the time, all my veins were breaking down in my legs. So it looked like I had varicose veins basically all up my legs.
Yeah.
Because it breaks that all down. So it's all those things. But he going in and telling, that's the thing I think people are fearful of, is opening up about it. And once I'd came out and I'd explained, it was like I'd gone in and told him basically I'd had a cold.
Yeah.
He was that supportive. He didn't judge me. He didn't say, oh, you're an idiot or anything like that. He was so supportive, and that gave me courage to battle on. And
yeah, that's fantastic because ultimately it's a medical thing, isn't it? And did you then?
Oh yeah, it is. There's no doubt about it. There's no. I had a great bringing. I was brought up great. There was no poverty or anything. We lived in a nice house, things like that. There's something in me that brought that on. That to want to damage yourself that much, and go to those. I was taking 48 cans of Strongbow out of Tesco's a day.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was still paying my mortgage, but there was debt there, but I couldn't, it didn't matter. I was just driven to this drink and keep feeding it,
I think that's an interesting point as well. Yeah. Like you say, because people, obviously that, I think there's reasons behind why people might drink or use drugs or whatever, trauma or things happening in your life. But equally, there's so many people where, like you say, you've had a good upbringing, or there's nothing you can't point to anything specific. And it sounds like you've got your family obviously was around you and sort of and helped.
Yeah, well, that became a bit, not so much with my dad, but with my mum, it became strained.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd go out for meals, and she reminded me the other day. So we went to the local pub of an evening for a meal, and she said, "You sat there, they served your meal up, and you just face planted it." I just passed out, and she said, "We had to take you out." And she said all those things, and as we were chatting, she said to me, she said, "My son was dead. You weren't my son anymore." She said, "I'd lost you forever." That's what she thought. And she said, "There was only one way you were heading." And yeah, that was a wooden box, basically. But of course, when I became sober, and I always remember it, and she said it was the best Christmas present she could ever have at her son back.
Yeah. And those
sort of things, that's massive incentive. When you try and explain to people when they're going through the darkness, and you can't see the wood for the trees, if you get the old saying. Yeah. But if you could just listen to people like me, and there's plenty you can talk to who have been through it. It's these little things that, it's just something someone said to you, but it means so much. For my mum to say that to me, and show how proud she is of what I've done and what I'm achieving, She says to me now, "You're so happy." Yeah. And it is because I am high on life.
Yeah, yeah.
Drink never bring me this.
No.
Sobriety has. I walk around. I think people, when I walk down the road, think I'm a nutcase because I'm always grinning and laughing.
Yeah, but you can see it. It's great. I think that's why people love your Twitter as well, because your videos, and you can tell, mate. It comes.
People, yeah, I mean, like the other night when I did the clown thing.
Yeah.
Right. But there's a secret message there, right? Because I would have only ever done that sort of stuff when I was drunk.
Yeah.
Now I'm doing it sober, and I've been out to parties with my sister, and I'll be dancing around, and my sister's friends say, "Is he drunk?" And she say, "No, he's just so high on life." Yeah. And it proves that you can do it. You can get through it, and you can enjoy life fully without that devil on your back.
Yeah. And so did you? So you went cold turkey and obviously had the collapse, and then how did you? So the doctor, did he help you? Was it? Do you have any sort of medication? How did you actually then continue?
Yeah, well, they put not so much medication. They put me on beta blockers and things like that because my heart. Obviously, my heart was racing all the time.
Yeah.
So that all had to be regulated. But rehab were contacted.
Yeah.
Now this was the dangerous thing. They said to me I had to go back on the 30 cans. This was within the few days that I'd gone. Yeah, they said he's got to go back on the 30 cans because otherwise it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And my mum said he's already had the fit. And they said we can't help him then. We can't do any. They couldn't. There was no other way. You know, like the doctor said to me, he said, "You've done it." He said, "You've got through the worst." But he said, "You nearly killed yourself doing it." And I don't recommend this to anyone to do what I did.
No.
You know, again, I didn't. People had warned me about going cold turkey that you could have a fit.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, yeah, all right, whatever. But when I look back, that was my only way out. And if I'd gone back on the cans and decreased like they said, it wouldn't have happened.
No.
I would have. Once I'd got to that 32. I'd have sat there and thought, I'll do the 31 tomorrow. I have another one to get that, you know, to get that hit. And it would have, and like the doctor said, my liver was on its way out. He said, if you hadn't stopped when you did, he said, you would have gone. He said, if you'd done what the rehab said, you would have gone.
Yeah. So
he said, you did it, but all the wrong way. But it worked for me, you know. Everyone's individual, I think. I don't think there's a textbook to.
Did you, so that was that it then? Did you, I mean, I don't know if it does whether or not. Did you ever drink again, or did you have relapses, or no?
There was obviously I couldn't work. The doctor wouldn't let me work because he said there's a chance. He said if you do any physical sort of work, you're going to have a heart attack.
Right.
And he said in the end, I begged him because I couldn't get any work anywhere. Yeah. And the job that I'm in at the moment, which I've been there now for years, they gave me a chance. And I begged him. I said, look, I'm running out of money. The missus was leaving. I said, I've got no other way. And he wrote a disclaimer. He said, if you have a heart attack, and he wrote it all down on the notes, a disclaimer. He said, I'm not responsible. I've told him not to go to work, you know. And yeah, so
the thing is, though, I guess it helps because, you know, you talked about when you were off work, then that almost made it worse with the drink. It must have helped to get to work again, to have, you know, just something to fill the time and bit of, yeah.
I mean, when I was in recovery, you know, at home and the shakes and everything, and the urge to drink was always there.
Yeah.
And what I used to do, if it was that bad, I'd go around to the local pub, and of course it was a weekday morning. I'd go in there when they opened, and I'd say to the guy, "Can I have a bottle of Beck's Blue?" And he used to look at me and he said, "Well, that's non-alcoholic." I said, "Yeah, that's why I want it."
Yeah.
And I'd have that Beck's Blue, sit there and drink it, and in my mind, I'd been to the pub.
Yeah.
And I'd come home and I was okay. And another thing no one ever taught me this, and no one, I don't know, it all just sort of, it all evolved. You know, it'd be the same as I'd go over Tesco's and I'd take myself through the alcohol aisle and buy a can of Coke and then come out. It was that whole...
The habit thing, isn't it, I guess? Yeah.
Same as away games. I was still going to football. We'd get to London, and when I used to get to London, I'd be on the look for more drink. I'd go, say Waterloo Station, I'd go into Marks and Spencer, whatever it is there, go through that alcohol aisle and come out with a soft drink. And I always remember one of my mates said, "You've done it again." He said, "Keep going." And it was, you know, no one ever told me. There was no book. And I mean, I'd watch a few videos on YouTube and things, but it just sort of, I don't know, it just happened, you know.
How long are we talking now then? How many years? How long?
6 years.
6 years. Yeah. Incredible.
But there's been opportunity. I mean, we went up to, I think it was Blackpool, and we'd been in the game. We went back to a pub afterwards, and everyone was all, you know, they was all over in the corner chatting there. And I went up to get a drink, and the bloke gave me this bottle. I'd asked for Beck's Blue. He gave me this bottle, and I looked and I smelt it, and I said, "Mate, get that away from me." And it was a proper bottle of Beck's. And he said, "What's up?" He said, "It's just," I said, "I'm an alcoholic. I'm like, I can't drink it." "Oh, bloody hell," he said. But that split second, when I looked around that pub, no one was watching me. I could have necked it. But it was that strength that I'd gradually got, because I knew one drink for me and I'll be back on that road again.
Yeah. And so do you find it, is difficult. I suppose, has it got easier, or is it a sort of?
Yeah, now I manage it.
Yeah.
Whereas before, alcohol dictated to me, alcohol ruled my life. I now rule it.
Yeah.
And there's times I want to drink. No word of a lie, you know, especially in the summer, in the environment I work in. You know, we've got a terrace there, everyone's out there drinking, and my sense of smell for alcohol now is so strong. I could walk through some of the site, and I say to one of my mates one day, they're drinking whiskey round it. He said, "How do you know?" I said, "I can smell it." He said, "Well, I can't." We'd walk around the corner, and there's a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah,
that's God's honest truth. That happens, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I manage it now. It doesn't manage me. You know, when I get those days where I want to drink, I'll either take myself over Tesco's and do what I used to do.
Yeah.
And that's where the clothes comes in, the big part of it, because it gives me something else to concentrate on. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So just quickly, actually, before we talk clothes, it's a bit of a funny question, but what do you enjoy in terms of drinks now? Because that's one of the funny things when you know in pubs is soft drink selections are so bad, aren't they? And
yeah, I mean,
you know, what is it about? Can you when you go and get a soft drink, do you get pleasure from that, or is it just sort of a replacement?
Yeah, I know that I'm not going to be in that. When I look around the pub, like especially Christmas, and obviously not this year, but other years, when you look round and you see everyone, yeah, they're all having a great time, but I know that next morning their whole day is going to be wiped out.
Yeah.
Whereas me, I'll be fresh as a daisy, and I'll be up. You know, I lost so many days through my life through alcohol, whether it was days I didn't remember, or it was days I spent in bed where I was so bloody ill, you know. So now every day, and this is my big motto, is every day is like Christmas Eve. And I've got a little keyring which one of my friends got done, bless her. She had that printed up, and that sits by my bed. So every day I wake up, it says every day is like Christmas Eve, because it is. Because you've got so much to look forward to. Whereas before, the alcohol had consumed me, and all I wanted to do was drink and get in that oblivion again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go out and I'll order a pot of tea, and I'll get the funniest looks. I mean, look at me, right? I walk into a pub. We went to a little country pub a few Christmases ago, and I said to the bloke, "Have a pot of tea," and he used the F word and the off, and he said, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Look at all the bit." I said, "Mate, I just want a pot of tea." Oh, he went. I said, "Look, I'm a recovering alcoholic." Oh Christ, he went. But it was that whole, because he looked at my image.
Yeah. Do you think that is our attitude changing at all? Have you noticed that at all in terms of pubs and how people respond when you tell them, or sort of?
I think because pubs now are more family orientated, you know, and obviously you've got the drink drive, big no. Not that I ever did that, but I got rid of my car because of that reason. Because I knew there was that temptation, so I got rid of my car, and I used to use a push bike and things. But I think like I say, the pubs now are more family orientated. I mean, I'll quite happily go in there and order a pint of Coke, or like I say, a pot of tea. And I think now it's a bit more acceptable, you know.
So just before we go on to the close, you made the good point. I think that everyone's different, and there's no right way of going about it. But I suppose if someone is sort of feeling or thinks they're struggling with alcohol or drugs, or they want to stop, I mean, what have you got? Any advice? Is there anything you would say to someone?
I've always said go straight to your doctor. Go to your doctor. One, medically they help you, and two, it's getting over that whole thing of telling someone, because that's the biggest leap. You know, once you've opened up, that day after I told the doctor and I came out, it honestly was like a massive cloud lifted off my head, because I thought I've now broken that barrier. You know, it's I always make the comparison of, if you walked into a park and you see, say 5, 6 in the morning, you see a guy smoking a cigarette, you're not going to bat an eyelid. But you see a guy with a can of Special Brew in his hand, you're going to think, Jesus, he's got a problem. Same sort of addiction.
Yeah.
But you know, it's that stigma with alcohol, and it's the same thing again. There's people that go after work, they'll go to pubs or wine bars, they'll have loads of drink. That's acceptable.
Yeah.
But if you are in that same job and you're the guy that goes and sits in a park with a load of cans, you're a dirtbag.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that whole acceptable thing. So it's getting across. When you go to the doctors and you tell them, it's that whole relief. And then you're on the right road, and they can advise you with counselling or whatever. obviously I didn't go for it because I'd done it my own way,
Yeah.
you know, and writing my blogs, that helped me. That was a therapy. And doing this, it's a massive therapy, you know.
And it's funny because I did see something on, there's a guy on Twitter, secret drug addict, and he posted something about saying it's good because I think mental health has got a lot more, there's a lot more acceptance and understanding around it, and that's great. But he sort of just said, oh, you know, mental health is a lot more accepted, but try telling someone you're an addict, you know, or try telling your workplace you're an addict. And it is, there is.
People try all the time with me. And my dad, we used to go around to theirs on a Sunday for lunch, and my parents would come round. And the conservatory out there, I called it the Lager Lounge.
Yeah.
But we used to sit in there, and as the night wore on, Dad would say to me, Gav, you're an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And at points I'd cry because I knew inside I was, and I didn't know a way out. And he'd say, come on, you've got to try and give up. You've got to give up. And the next day I'd get up and I'd think, nah, I'll try next week. And I'd carry on. There were times where I think there was once I went 1 or 2 weeks sober, but something would upset me and it would trigger me again. And I'd go back on it. You know, but
sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, but it's good. Sorry, it's good to hear actually, because I think you talk about the fear of telling people, and it's I think it's encouraging. You talk about going to football and your mate and people being supportive, not sort of, not, you know, not, no one's bullying you into go, why aren't you having a drink? It's a football or whatever. You know, I'm sure there are people around maybe, and not everyone's perhaps as lucky to have the support network. But I think it is great. It's great to hear. Yeah, I suppose that's true. I mean, that is true. But it's encouraging to hear. Cause I think that's the big thing, isn't it? People have got fear, and it's great to hear people like you talk about when you did tell people that it's not as bad as you think it's going to be.
That's it. I mean, when I started writing my blogs, and I did a little radio interview, and my mum said, "Why'd you do it? It's embarrassing." And I said, "That's why I do it.
Yeah,
because it shouldn't be embarrassing because you've got an illness." And now she's come round to it now, and she understands why I do it, and you know, opening up to people. And it is where I hid away so long. You know, I sort of hid people could see it, but I used to hide away and disappear off, you know, drinking and things like that, so people didn't see the quantities I was drinking.
Yeah.
And it was that shame factor. But if you come out and you tell people, you will find out a lot of people are really supportive. You might get the 1 or 2 idiots that say, I always remember one guy, he said to me, "Oh, you're weak-willed because you can't control it."
Yeah.
He's never been there, so he wouldn't know, would he?
No.
You know,
and I think that comes from people, I think, that have got something going on themselves.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Okay. No, that's it's, as I say, I think it's really helpful for other people, I think, to hear people like you talking about it in that way.
It's always been a stigma, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, let's get on to the close then. And you've already sort of touched on this, how sort of returning, I suppose, to your love of clothes and the casual culture was almost it was something that came out of going sober, and it became something to sort of channel, I guess. So did you I guess during the sort of worst times of you drinking, I guess the clothes, just because of money or whatever, just dropped off in terms of interest?
My friends at football, they used to say to me, "You always looked smart." I didn't have all the decent gear, but they said you never ever let your sort of standard, the way you look, drop. I never became scruffy and things, and I was always clean shaven and things like that.
Yeah.
But when I became sober, and it all started to come back again, you know, my love for it, and it really did help me. And of course, then I was watching stuff on the TV and, you know, on YouTube, and then starting to go to London on my own. I'd get up on a Saturday and I'd go off to London and go all around Carnaby Street, and it was like, again, like a Christmas day to me. I was like, I was free, and I could fight the battle with the pubs. I'd walk past pubs, and then I had my little safe ones where I'd go and get tea and things like that, you know, where I felt comfortable. I didn't feel pressurized. But that whole thing, and it's still to this day now, excitement, you know, of looking through, you know, the web and Depop and eBay and finding these little nuggets, you know. Yeah. And I love it. You know?
And how much had changed, did you feel? And obviously you would have kept an eye on stuff, but when you kind of really got back into it, what was the first stuff that you the first brands, and what were the first pieces you sort of started looking at and what and picked up?
I was always like the old vintage CP stuff, you know, the old stuff. I'd always go hunting for that, like the safari jackets. And I've got a duffel coat up there. I think that's, I can't remember the year. I think it's from the 80s, something like that.
Wow.
You know, stuff like that. But that all then feeds, if you get into it, and like with some of my mates, they love it as well. So it's sort of one brand will feed another.
Yeah.
You know, you move on and start. It's like now I love all the Japanese stuff. You know, it's like what I'm wearing now, sassafras. It's a gardener's jacket.
Right.
All intents and purposes. Now, if someone had said to me 10 years ago, "You'll be wearing a Japanese gardener's jacket," I'd have laughed at them.
Yeah.
But it's all those things, engineered garments and things like that, all begin to evolve from that love of the stuff you used to wear.
Yeah.
It's a good scene at the moment, I think. There's a lot of new, you know, and the independents, you know, the everyday garments and things like that. Newell's, Arto, who I've been pushing, you know.
Okay.
It's great. All these independents coming out, and they do some blinding gear, you know.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting, and I wanted to come on to this in terms of the casual scene and whatever, sort of exactly what that means. And I almost feel a bit like, I mean, I suppose I'm a bit young. I wasn't there really for obviously the start of it, and I kind of got into it, I suppose, from being in Liverpool, living in Liverpool. But it feels a bit and it's good talking to you and sort of hearing that optimism, because I almost feel a bit like at times the scene has gone a bit dead at points where, you know, you talked about Stone Island being so prevalent now, and I mean, I suppose it's you know,
prevalent in the places it shouldn't be. You
yeah,
know?
yeah. And it's a shame. I mean, I suppose you don't want to judge as young lads going to football and they're doing their thing, but you just, you know, it's become a bit of a uniform, and you just see and they're just wearing the same Stone Island Adidas trainers.
That's why I love the casual culture, because skins, punks, mods, not taking anything away from that, became quite uniformed, didn't it?
Yeah.
You know, but with the casual culture, casual was always, you know, you'd go out with something different that somebody didn't have on, and that sort of side of it has been lost. But not on the older ones, not on my age group, and you know, the older ones. They're still looking for those little pieces that other people haven't got. You know, it's that whole ethos, and it's trying to keep explaining that, and that's why I love the Japanese stuff, and you know, Koreans are doing it. Hong Kong, Club Stubborn. There's a brand in Hong Kong called Club Stubborn, and look them up on the web. They do some great pieces. But if you were to wear that out, and someone looked, well, what makes that? I ain't seen that before. But that was that whole casual thing.
Yeah.
It was to go out with something that no one knew what you were wearing. Whereas you say, you go out now, and that's always the danger with Adidas as well now. You buy the new release, you can go out, say you're going to an away game, you get on a train, there could be 20, 30% of the geezers on there with the same shoes as you. You're like, oh. And then that goes back to like women when they buy a dress for a wedding and some other bird's got the same one on. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
It's funny, I do love Adidas, and to be honest, I mean, there are other trainers I like, but I'm getting to the point where I'm sort of thinking I feel a bit like I want to just move away. But then I'll see a pair and I think, well,
Nevesta. Have you ever seen the Nevesta, the pumps?
Don't think so. No, Nevesta.
Well, look, I don't think you can see them there. Look.
Oh yeah.
Toe. Well, they're like a pump, but I kept looking at them and I thought there's something different, and I took that leap, bought them, and again I had the absolute, you know, ripped out of me. What, you to go to PE classes, Gav? But then I went down and to see my mate, you know, the guy I explained to you the other day, and we're going all through his trainers, and I looked and I said, you got some Nevesta, and he said, I love them, and he's old school. Yeah. He said, I love them. I said, I've just been started buying them. I didn't know he had them, and I'd started buying them, and of course then they're so comfy, they really are nice. And I then started putting them on Twitter, and people were and ahhing, and then they started to buy them, and they could see what I liked in them. I wear them in the house as slippers. Yeah, they're that comfy. You know, they really are nice, and you can pick them up. I was picking them up for 20 odd quid. You know, they were like 40, 50 quid, maybe a bit more RRP, but you can pick them up in sales. So yeah, there's those, and Mephisto, like the hiking that you can buy. They're lovely. They really are. Yeah, they're quite dear, but you can pick them up, you know, occasionally in sales. or on eBay. I've got a brand new pair of Mephisto Cruiser. I think I paid 80 quid.
Right.
You're looking at near on 200. They were brand new, but still tagged. You know, so it's those little.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something that's been a bit lost. I mean, maybe not everywhere, but I do. It's a shame because you sort of look at some of the young lads that go to football together, and they're having a great time. Thinking, yeah, you're sort of doing it right, but don't, you know, everyone's. I suppose maybe it does come a bit from that fear of perhaps their mates taking the piss out of them, but it does feel a bit lost. There's been a bit of a loss of.
I think that is a lot of it. Is the fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll you know, you looking at. There's a lot of this. They all seem to wear black, don't they? There's a lot of that goes on, and black and white trainers, and it is, yeah, it's very regulated. Where a lot of the older lads will still wear something a bit bright, you know.
Yeah.
You know, things like that.
It is about perhaps finding something different. And I mean, I've got mates that aren't really into the scenes, old mates from school and stuff, and they'll rip the piss out of me. I'll wear something tracksuit or whatever, but you know, it's they just know that's sort of me and that's what I'm into, and they won't believe I've spent a certain amount of money on a jacket, but if it makes you, you know, it makes you feel good, and yeah, because they might spend 200 quid on something I've got no interest in, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It is, again, it's what you feel comfortable in. I mean, I'll go out with my deer stalker on.
Yeah.
And people have ripped me, you know. But it's quite funny. I was walking along Hayling Beach the other day. I had my deer stalker on, and of course you get a few funny looks. And then I heard, "Good morning, sir," and it was one of these. On Hayling, you get a lot of real like top brass. It's snooty people. Good morning, sir, and how are you? And all this. Now, as I walked off, I thought, yeah, he sort of judged me on what I'm wearing. He thinks I'm like some gent.
Yeah.
Little does he know, if I'd been walking along there, you know, with boots and braces on, he wouldn't have spoken to me.
No.
But it's that whole, you know, that whole thing of, yeah, and I love my deer stalker. I'll go out, love it, you know.
So I bet. I mean, I'm not seeing it. I bet it suits you. It's about also what suits you, don't you? Like that's the other thing. People they might just wear a Stone Island jacket because it's Stone Island, but you think, well, do you actually like it? Does it suit you? You know.
Yeah, that's it. There is that. I mean, I love this jacket. I was so pleased I got it. You know.
Yeah.
All the bits, a lot of the stuff, you know. That I'm picking up now, I really enjoy. You know, and I love wearing them out.
What are your thoughts? It's interesting about the casual scene, because naturally I think a lot of the stuff is quite expensive, and I suppose that comes from, you know, certain brands, if they're going to be more unusual or well made, they're going to be more expensive. But again, do you feel like there's sometimes people go down the wrong path of it's about the money? I mean, have you got brands that you associate with?
There's a lot of that. I mean, that's why hence I'm called the sniper.
Yeah.
Because I'll go out. It's like that. I bought a uniform bridge jacket the other day. It's near on 200 quid RRP. I found it in sale for 60 odd quid. Now, when I walk down the street, anyone who knows that brand will look at it and think, wow, look at that. He's got, you know, that's top dollar. I didn't pay top dollar.
No.
It's that whole thing. But yeah, there is a lot of that. It's that peer pressure. If you would go out and how much you give for them then? Well, I'll only give some. Well, I paid 400 for it. And it don't make no odds, does it? If they're 20 quid, if you've got the same shoe, that's 20 quid, and that one's 400. You still got the same shoe.
Exactly.
But you're a little bit more savvy because you've done it for less money. That's the way I look at it, you know. And that's what drives me as well. Is trying to find bits at value, you know, and still go out looking decent, but you haven't pushed the barrier and got yourself, you know, in a bit of debt, basically.
Yeah. No, exactly. And let's just talk a little bit about Twitter and sort of, and I suppose the community and how did was Twitter part of something which you got into as well, out of, you know, part of the recovery, not necessarily part of the recovery, but was it an element of sort of connecting with people, and how did you first get into sort of Twitter?
When I worked in the park, funny, it was Stan Collymore, of all people, who was really banging on about Twitter, and I thought, what's this Twitter thing about?
Yeah,
because I don't know if I'd been on Facebook. I just didn't. Facebook became too much of tittle tattling and the family watching you and things like that. That wasn't for me, because obviously with the drink, you know. But Twitter, I didn't know loads of people on there, so I could go on there and I could post, you know, about like I said, the lager lounge, the conservatory was the lager lounge, and I used to do this thing of every lunchtime crack, which was me opening a can. Of course, it became like a little competition. Who was the first one to crack the can?
Yeah.
But there was that, you didn't have that pressure of family watching you and things like that, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it evolved, and it's been a big help with the sobriety thing.
Yeah.
You know, the support, and obviously, you know, doing again stuff like this, and putting my story out there and getting the feedback. And every little message that I get, and I get a lot of, you know, private messages, people saying, keep going, Gav, and then I'll get messages from other people who are struggling. And then you get them when they're on they start their road to recovery. And you don't hear from ages. And then you'll get a message and they'll say, I'm so happy. And, you know, I'm out doing this and I'm out doing that. I'm seeing my kids again. And it feeds me and it brings me happiness, because I think, yeah, they're doing it, you know, and they're seeing the message that I try so hard to get across, you know, that sobriety isn't anything to be, because there's that stigma, you're boring because you're sober.
Yeah.
I'm far from that. I love it, you know. I make a right dick of myself at times, but I don't care, you know. I'm doing it, and I'm doing it sober, and that's the main thing. And whatever I do, and as long as I can keep doing it and I keep staying on that path, I'm happy. And that's what matters, is me being happy and my family being happy, and not seeing the state I used to be in, you know, and it gives them happiness, you know.
Yeah.
And my story has been one that you couldn't make up. From going sober, within 2 years, finds out I had a sister I never knew I had.
Yeah.
And then obviously my grandchildren coming along.
Yeah.
And of course all my clothes and the whole living my life this casual way. Those are all things that if I'd carried on the way I was, I would never have experienced. I would never met my sister. You know, she would eventually found out that I drunk myself to death.
Yeah.
So it's all those things that give me so much joy that, you know, I can embrace that every day.
Yeah.
I've got all that around me now, and it's an incredible feeling.
I think it's a fantastic message, because I do think people probably think they'll lose something maybe if they without drinking.
Yeah, that's the thing. It is. It's that whole, and that is down to society.
Yeah.
Alcohol, drinking, smoking, everything is all part of society. And if you go out, say I went into a room, I don't know, to a meeting or something, and I didn't know anyone, and they're all, oh, let's have a glass of wine. If I turned and said no, their instant reaction is, oh, he's a bit of a drip.
Yeah.
But they don't know my story, you know. I work with another alcoholic. He's a lot older than me, and he's been sober a long time. And he always says, when people say to him, you're boring, you don't drink, he always says, I drunk more than you ever will in your life.
Yeah.
He comes back, you know, he hits them back with things.
Yeah.
He's one of the funniest guys, but we bounce off one another, because a lot of the things that's happened to me, like with the veins and the ting, he gets all that, you know, and he understands. So we go to work when we have got work, and you know, I can chat to him and bounce off one another. But yeah, that whole society stigma thing, that if you don't drink, you're boring. My sister's virtually teetotal, and she gets it all the time, you know. But we have such a laugh, you know, when we go out. We're like two naughty kids, you know. And you couldn't. This is where the passion comes out of me now. But my sister, I never grew up with her. She lives 3 streets down from me. I didn't know anything about her. Anyway, we are so much alike, and I always remember we went to Chichester once shopping, and we were like 2 kids in a sweet shop, and I was in the ladies department with her, and we were laughing and you know, all these clothes. But I looked at her, and I call her the ready bet girl, because she glows.
Oh,
she glows, with happiness, you know.
Yeah.
And see, you can see the way my life has changed and the way I am, and it's all those ingredients that make my life what it is. And I'm in a really good place, you know, and long may it continue. You know,
100%, mate. Completely, yeah. And I think, as I say, you completely see that from you. You're talking about the glowing thing, because you do exude sort of, you know, enthusiasm and sort of happiness. And it's funny, you talk about like missing out on stuff. I mean, even a couple of times, you know, obviously I do drink, probably more so than anyone. You know, you should. Everyone does probably. But there's been points where I've got up on a weekend or something, and I've I just looked on Twitter, and you put a video up, and you're out, and the sun's shining, and you said, I think, bloody hell, he's out and about, and I've just woken up, not necessarily absolutely hanging or even having been out, but you just think, oh, and it's great to see, and it's and I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is helping other people. What you do on Twitter, and
well, hopefully, that's it. Like I say, it helps me. Even though sometimes, I do silly things, but that helps me because it's that whole confidence thing.
Yeah.
But like you've just said there, me being out and about and enjoying life, there's so much more to it. Whereas before, I'd get up and my whole mentality was the pub. That's my only aim, was to get in that pub, But now I'm out and I can't wait to get back on trains.
Yeah.
And get up to London, or get a map and just stick a pin in it and go to some little village and have a wander around.
Yeah.
All things like get on my scooter. There's so much more to it without that demon of the drink on my back.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got no problem with people drinking. Don't get me wrong. The thing with me is I can't control it.
Yeah.
One drink, it's dangerous to me. So I've got to compensate and make my life the best it is, and I'm doing that without drink.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to go out and have a meal and a few glasses of wine and a few beers, but I know I can't do that because that would be me. I mean, I did an interview and we went to a hotel and I said to the lady, look at that bar, and they had all the the spirits all laid out on this bar. I said, what does it remind you of? She said, I don't know. She said, what's it? I said, a sweet shop, because of all the different colours. But that attracted me, all those sort of things. And I'd look at it and think, I'll try that. So
that's the other thing. You mentioned smoking, and obviously I've done that more now with the package, but you forget that. I mean, it is so ingrained in our society, the adverts and the lifestyle that's sort of portrayed around drinking, and I get exactly the same. I drink, go into football. So yeah, it's a funny.
The whole thing of Christmas, drink.
Yeah,
that's the first thing. If you, I guarantee 99%, if you say to people, what's the first thing? Oh, we've got to get the drink in.
Yeah.
It is
the supermarkets are just piled up with, and they're all on offer, aren't they? The litre bottles of this and that. Yeah. It's just, we talked a bit about soft drinks and stuff. Have you do you drink like non-alcoholic alcohol, as in like beers, or do you just, for you, is it not about?
No, I used to. When I was coming off it, and my mum said you'll get addicted to those.
Yeah.
But as time went on, I sort of lost interest in them. Occasionally on a summer's night, if we go out to a little country pub, I might have one. But majority of the time, it'll either be a Coke or I'm not bothered now.
No.
But I think I enjoy it because it's that whole thing of knowing I'm going to wake up with a clear head and I can enjoy the following day.
Yeah.
It's funny. I went to Fontwell. Wasn't long after I'd gone sober, and I thought I'll go back racing, because racing again was another love that went down the pan because of the drink.
Yeah.
Going racing became just a drink fest.
Yeah.
So I went to Fontwell and I went into the bar, the pub that I always used. And before I knew it, I'd ordered this, and it is like a restaurant sort of, more that sort of lines. But I'd ordered a pot of tea.
Yeah.
And I walked, and I was really proud of myself. Now people say, oh, it's just a pot of tea. But to me, that was a massive step to go back to racing and have a pot of tea. Whereas before, I used to go to Ascot, and you'd had the guys with the barrels on their backs. I might as well have been walking around behind them. Lunacy. Yeah, I might as well have done it. And me and my dad decided we'd have a drinking competition. He's not a pint drinker. He'll have a few pints and that's it. Well, we decided we'd have a drinking competition. Well, he was shot to bits because I was just going mad at it, and all those sort of things. It just ruled me, and I'm glad, that I've managed to get through it and enjoy life like I do now. And
it's funny that you mentioned racing, because that's another. It's another, not exclusively, but the big. I go to Cheltenham on the Friday of the year. And my best mates live in Newbury, so we go to Hennessy and stuff a lot. But it is, I'm into my racing, but there's this, and it's not a bad thing. I get it. There's a social aspect to it, but it is still a lot of it's about drinking, and
it is. You can go, like when I used to go to Goodwood a lot, and it got to the point, especially when I went sober, that you'd go and people weren't interested in the horse racing. No. It was the whole thing of getting smashed, And of course, with me, racing isn't just about gambling. It's the other side, the other aspect of it. I used to go up to John Dunlop stables a lot.
Yeah.
At one time, he took me up on the gallops, up on the downs at Arundel.
Yeah.
And we stood there chatting, and then it just went quiet, and you just heard this. And it was the 2-year-olds coming up the gallops.
Yeah.
But it was all that sort of magical. And it's like yesterday with that Goshen.
Yeah.
To know how much hard work they put in and how caring they are to these horses and the love they have for them. And to see him back on track, you know, it made my day, you know.
Yeah.
And the other win was there where you could hear the girls screaming, you know, the trainer there and the stable girls absolutely screaming. And it brought a tear to my eye because you know how much passion they got for it.
Yeah.
You know, it always, it's magical. I find it magical, some of it. And Cheltenham's magical. I can't wait, you know.
No, it's like, it's funny because I probably got into it. I mean, I had sort of vague in, but I got into it more through the social side of it. And my mate living in Newbury would go. And then the more and more it's gone on, the more I've got interested in just the racing. And Cheltenham, to be fair, we do have a drink. Well, it's funny actually. We go to Cheltenham. We go up on the Friday morning.
Really go there, could you not have a drink?
Well, you know, but we do. We sort of go and we stop and have a breakfast on the way, and then we're getting a Guinness tent. I mean, I can't drink Guinness anymore because I'm celiac, so I can't have gluten. But
all right, okay.
But anyway, so we've been in a Guinness tent, and then we'll drink fairly steadily up. But then we don't have any drinks when the racing's actually on, and we'll stop. Then we'll just, because to be honest, I mean, I went to Ascot once and hated it, but because if you're trying to go to the bar and you're going to try and put a bet on, and then you can't, you're all over the place, you know. So we watched all the racing, and then depending how it's gone, well, in fact, it doesn't really matter how it's gone. We end up in the champagne bar. I won on Native River Cup, and it, you know, whoever wins just ends up spending all the money anyway. Yeah, we go on, but it's good. But I went with my couple of mates, and we went just to the first jumps day at Cheltenham a couple of years ago. Obviously, much quieter, good racing, and it was great. Yeah. Just, you know, my mate was driving. I think I might have had one, but we sort of had coffees and just enjoyed the racing. And I'm starting to really enjoy those days.
That's why I go to Fontwell.
Yeah,
that's why I go there. It's the little jumps course, figure of 8, and you get proper racing people there. You know, luckily enough, I went with one of my friends. It was just prior to this lockdown. You know, when you could have so many. She was good enough, and we met up, and we went racing. And it was great to be back. You know, and we luckily had a table right on the finishing line, and sat there. You know, soft drinks and whatever. But it was lovely. You know, and I love it there because it's that whole the racing people, you know. Whereas you go to Goodwood, especially the big meeting, and it is all very much drink related, you know. But that's what people want; they enjoy it. So
it's got its place, I guess, and it does well for the courses. They obviously get big paydays.
That's the thing; it's money, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's the same with football. Most of that's corporate now.
Yeah.
Money, you know, whereas it's gone from the old terrace days. I miss the terrace days, you know, where you could walk along the terrace and bump into different guys. You know, now you're stuck in your seat, and it's a bit I call it cinematic.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it'll probably I think through the COVID thing, I think it's going to almost kill it. It was already dead, I think, but I was thinking about it with the TV now and how you got the fake crowd noise and different camera angles, and I think they're basically lining up for football just to be consumed at home, and the grounds will be more and more corporate. I mean, I
think they'll take a lot of advantage out of things like this.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a bit of a depressing view of it, but I've just got a nasty, and it's all about the TV companies anyway, so they'll do as much as they can, I think, to make it about a TV thing. But all right, I won't keep you too much longer. Just before we finish, ask you a few tips on a couple of things, really. So whilst we're just talking about racing, then what are your thoughts on Cheltenham? Have you got any I say tips? Yeah, what are you really looking forward to in terms of
Goshen? That's the one. Yeah, that's the one. I mean, if Goshen goes clear, you'll hear Hayden Island erupt because I will proper. That's the one. I haven't got any. I think where things have been so up in the air. Yeah. You know, and I think it's hard for the trainers at the moment because, I mean, are the Irish boys going to come over? We don't know what the restrictions are.
No.
You know, you're not going to get so much of the, you know, sending all their staff over, because obviously they're going to have to go back into quarantine. So it's all a bit up in the air. But no, Goten is the one that, you know, that's the one. If that wins, that will be Cheltenham for me. I'd love it. You know.
Have you got a favorite? Have you got a favorite day of the week?
Gold Cup Day would always be the favourite, wouldn't it? I went down when Seymour Business won. Right. And it was my dad's birthday, funny enough, and he backed it.
Oh wow!
And we were right by the finishing line, and Dad's not one to shout that much. He's not like me. He won't holler, but that day he did, and it was great. You know, great memories. You know, racing has given me some, and that's why my name Barney Brazil. Yeah. Barney comes from Barney Curley, the trainer.
Okay, yeah.
The Irish guy who was the massive gambler, the yellow Samku and things like that. Well, years ago, I'd read his book, given a little bit back and stuff. Anyway, he had a runner at Goodwood, and I was working in a factory over at Farlington at the time, and there'd been some explosion, all the traffic was bad. Anyway, it was a Friday night. I managed to get home. My missus said, "Are you still going?" I said, "Yeah." And I managed to get up to Goodwood. I went in and I spotted him. Right. Little Irishman, but there was something magical about him, you know, because of all the massive gambles. Yeah. Anyway, I went and got his autograph, and I've still got the race card to this day, and I've also got the newspaper cutting. Now, he had a horse running called Silvertown.
Right.
Amy Spencer was on it, and I stood in the parade ring, watched them. I then went to the betting ring. I put on 10 quid, I think at 8 to 1 it was. It went 8, 7, 6. It went into about 2 to 1. The bookies, there was just these men running around with wads of money. He took them for $1 million that night, and I've still got the newspaper cutting. That's how magical. That's why my dog's called Barney, and that's why it's Barney. And Brazil comes from Alan Brazil, because I always used to listen to him on the radio.
Yeah. So I actually hadn't thought about that, just so people know. Is that your Twitter handle? Is it Barney?
Yeah, Barney Brazil. Yeah.
People
when I first started, I thought, what on earth am I going to call myself? Because you know, otherwise it just comes up with numbers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And at the time, I was always listening to Talk Sport, and I was on the drink, and of course Alan Brazil likes to drink.
Yeah.
And Barney Curley, massive. So it became Barney Brazil, and it was just what it was. And then the casual sniper, that came from one of the guys, Andy Asausi. He, I think I'd grabbed something at some silly money, and he said, "You are the casual sniper." And it stuck, and I thought, I'll change it, and that became the name. So I owe him a drink at some point. He does only live down in Pompey, so the day will come.
Right. Well, just before we go then, mate. We talked a bit about the horses. So you've mentioned a few things you're into now in terms of the Japanese stuff, and have you got and you mentioned a few brands and things without wanting to give away too much and get everyone buying it.
No, I'd share it.
Yeah. So I mean, what have you? What few things to throw out there then for people to maybe have a look at? What would you recommend checking out?
I got this jacket, and I can't pronounce the name. His name is Hiroshi Nozawa. Okay. He does and they're called the Norbit range. Well, this guy, he worked for Columbia Black. He did a lot of stuff for them. What else have I got? Oh, for Foul Raven he worked for.
Yeah.
But I got this jacket off a guy on Depop, and it is absolutely beautiful. If you ever see any of that Norbit, it sounds like that film, doesn't it? But if ever you see any of that stuff come up, go for it, because it is outstanding. You know, Club Stubborn, as I said, you can look them up. They do. There's a guy on Twitter. I think he ordered something off. I've got a jacket of theirs, which is nice, but he ordered direct from their website, and it didn't take that long. I'm not sure. I think they are based abroad.
Right.
But that didn't take that long. But and of course, then you got the.
You've had a smock. Is it a smock? Something you had recently.
The two from the old vintage store.
Yeah,
they were selling them off for 10 quid. They are absolute banging. When I unwrapped it, I thought the quality of this, 10 quid. You know, that's the whole thing. You don't have to spend 200 to 300 quid to have something that looks really nice, you know, and you can pick up stuff. You pick up stuff on Depop that people have never worn.
Yeah.
I've got stuff that's come still tagged. I've got some Henry Lloyd jeans the other day, $5.99. And you know, when you unwrap a packet of jeans, they're like stiff, aren't they? Where they've been, $5.99. So you don't have to push the boundaries and go silly money. I mean, I've got a few bits that I've paid daft money for,
Yeah.
But they like a CP jacket I've got, but that was always something that I wanted, you know, that aim.
Yeah, special piece though, isn't it? I guess.
You know, decent prices. The CP company one block down stuff, the denim stuff. Now people wouldn't probably be aware of it, but I love it, and it's old school. It's really nice stuff, you know. But yeah, the independence, the everyday garments. Ryan, he's. I always say they're knocking it out the ballpark, and they are. You know, the Arto stuff. When I read about that on Twitter, and Timur, you know, the guy that produces that stuff, the money he's selling it off for, it is outstanding quality. It really is, you know. So yeah, it's out there. It's just that whole thing of being a bit different to what everyone else is wearing.
Yeah. Well,
worrying about it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, when I get this up on YouTube and stuff, I'll put shout some of this stuff out in the description and on the blog. But Gav, mate, really appreciate it. It's been fantastic talking to you.
Oh, no, I appreciate you taking your time out to
yeah, no, it's been great. Really enjoyed it. So yeah,
it's great therapy for me. So you know,
that's good to hear.
Now today, I'll be bouncing off the walls.
Yeah, because I'm the same. I feel all energized now as well. It's great. It's good stuff.
It is. And that's that whole thing. See, that's that whole thing of sobriety and the way it makes me, you know. Yeah, and a little big shout out to Alan Knight, the old Pompey goalie. I've said this before, but when I first started my journey, he DM'd me and he said, "Your life will be so you never ever realise how good your life will be." And now I'm at that point, you know, where I've begun to like myself. I enjoy life, you know. But yeah, I always remember that message. So yeah, big shout out to Alan Knight, the old Pompey goalie. For he inspired me with just that one message. So yeah,
that's brilliant. Well, that's fantastic, mate. That's a good place to end on it. And yeah, thanks again, mate. It's been fantastic. And
no worries.
Yeah, cheers, Gav.
Cheers, buddy. Bye now.
See you later on.